Alright, kiddies. It's time. You wanted it. I wanted it. Your brother wanted it. Your Aunt Margaret wanted it. Her aunts. Margaret, or Margaret Joe, or Joe Margaret. Long story short, we're doing it. White dragons. So, the first dragon I'm going to do is White Dragon. We're going to start with the chromatics. They're the most commonly recognized dragon, so to speak. The White Dragon is the least powerful, and what I'm using to rate their power is essentially the amount of hit dice they have, so how many hit points they have, and then how hard their breath weapon hits. So that's kind of how I'm basing, also how large they get. This is kind of how I'm basing how powerful a dragon is. Intelligence has a lot to do with it as well. So White Dragon is the least of the chromatic dragons, and chroma, color, is the color dragons. You have white, green, black, blue, red. Now, the argument for if that's the correct power order or not, something it's open to discussion. If you feel free, talk about it in chat and talk about it in the comments and stuff, and feel free to just, we're all here to talk about these things, and we're all here to learn. I'm learning kind of as well. Sorry, my shirt had a little ink on it, but we're learning, and that's what we're all about. And part of learning is discussing what ideas might be right, might be wrong. So we're gonna start with, like I said, white dragons, and they're the smallest and weakest of the chromatic dragons. The chromatic dragons are mostly known as evil dragons. They have evil alignments, and these white dragons are known to be slow-witted, but they are efficient hunters. They're not the smartest of dragons. They're not dumb by any means. But they are, to name a few, impulsive, vicious, animalistic, tending to consider only the needs and emotions of the moment. They don't have much for foresight or regret. Despite their low intelligence, they are as greedy and evil as other evil dragons. So, think of playground bully. Someone who's not very smart, kind of big, hulking, they just do what they want to do. And that's kind of how the White Dragon thinks and acts. They can typically be found in cold areas. That's what they're known for. They have a affinity for the cold. When they hatch, they have scales that are mirror-like, very shiny. And as they age, they kind of dull, and the sheen disappears on their scales. And by the time they reach a very old age, they will have scales of a very, very pale blue with a gray mixed in with the pure white. So they're basically they're very white scales, think paper white, very, very white. I don't know how else to put it. And as they age, they get some gray and blue in there, and it's very pale. And I think some people think it's for camouflage, because once they get to older ages, they can kind of control weather a little bit. But we'll get to that. They speak their own tongue. They speak basically the language of evil dragons. And about 1 in every 10 of them will have the ability to communicate with any intelligent creature at birth. So this increases by about 5% every age category, which means as they get older, they have a better chance of just being able to communicate with anything. So regardless, in combat, and this is something we haven't talked about, I just briefly touched on kind of how we're going to define dragons. So in combat, the White Dragon, and I'll go through each dragon individually because a lot of them have certain things they like to do. So regardless of size, a White Dragon prefers to use breath weapon and special abilities before closing into melee. This means that the dragon isn't just going to fly down or be in a dungeon and just openly fight a group of adventurers. That's not how dragons are meant to be played, and that's not how they're meant to be used. Dragons are fly by, breathe down, whittle people down. If you can take somebody out, then they fight. It can work to the white dragon's detriment, though, and that's up for you as a DM to decide. If your players kind of play it out and they have good tactics for hiding for the breath weapons and stuff and making it come down, its breath weapon could be exhausted essentially on the smaller prey before it has to attack the larger guys physically. If it's pursuing creatures in water, which it can swim very well, most dragons can, it usually goes for polar bears or seals or leopard seals, anything like that, and it will fight them in their own element with claws and teeth and stuff. Their breath weapon and their special abilities. So the breath weapon from a white dragon is a 70-foot long, 5-foot wide at the base, and 25 feet wide at the furthest point. So at the base where it comes out of its mouth, it's 5 feet wide, and it extends outwards to 25 feet, and that's whole cone would be 75 feet long. So that's something you can kind of. I usually don't play with a playmat, so I kind of eyeball it. We just play it by ear. If I say I can get a couple players, we talk it over. If you play with a playmat, it's easy to figure out. Creatures in the blast make their appropriate save. And if they save, they take half damage, stuff like that. Pretty typical. In the editions where dragons cast spells, which I'm not sure in the newer editions if they do or not. I haven't actually gone through a 5th edition monster manual yet. I know some still do. And I think 3rd edition they still had spells and stuff, so I'm assuming they still do. They start at like a base 5th magical level, and then it kind of scales. So in 2nd edition and older editions, they used the combat modifier, it was called, and as they got older, they had a higher combat modifier that gave them more powerful magic, essentially. When they're born, they can walk across any ice as if they're walking across the ground. This is kind of an ice walk ability. Just gives no issues. So a lot of them might have, up to their layers, they might have, when you think of long mountain passes and stuff, you think of the long archway or long stone bridge that you have to walk up. It's covered in snow. That's probably covered in ice underneath that, and that's kind of, can be used for like a skill check or a dexterity check or something, and a pretty grisly one if you want it to be. So that's something to think about. When they mature, they're going to be able to do gust of wind 3 times a day, which, this is older editions, it might change the abilities that they have, but basically they have kind of an ability to summon winds and stuff, and it can really disrupt arrows and things like that. When they get older, they can cast different walls of fog. It produces snow or hail rather than rain. Typically a wall of fog would produce rain. This one's going to produce snow and hail and just be a general nightmare. When they're the oldest age category, or close to the oldest age category, get their last ability, which is called freezing fog. And it obscures vision in a 100-foot radius and causes frost to form. This creates like a thin layer of glare ice in the ground and all surfaces within the radius. So it's just pure glare ice. So adventurers, if they don't have any spikes in their boots, crampons, anything like that, they're going to fall all over the place, and it makes combat very difficult. So if you're in a high level campaign, you can still make white dragons pretty nasty. When they're first born, their body length typically varies from 1 to 5 feet, so they're very small. The tail length is 1 to 4 feet. The max they can get is a body length of about 104 feet and a tail length of about 94 feet. So they can get pretty sizable. I mean, pretty big. So their habitat and society. We covered how they like to live in chilly or cold regions. They prefer lands where temperature rarely rises above freezing. Sorry, that's my phone going crazy. Should turn that on silent. And they like when snow is always covering the ground. When temperatures begin to warm, they kind of become lethargic, so they become very slow. Kind of the opposite of how a normal reptile, cold-blooded reptile, would be. When it gets cold for normal reptiles, they kind of slow down and get tired. White dragons, complete opposite. The colder, the better. The colder it is, the better they are. They like to bask instead of in sun. They like to bask in frigid winds, and they play and wallow in deep snowy banks. So literally the complete opposite of like what you would think from a normal, scaly folk, basically. They're lackadaisical parents. They're not very good parents. The young remain with the parent until they're basically like a young adult, which would be like, that's tough to say. I mean, basically until they're about probably a quarter way grown. I'd say 25% grown to like the full size of an adult, or maybe even 50% of the way to a full size adult. I guess it depends upon. It'd be a few years at least. Then they would go off on their own. But during the initial time, they're not protected by their parents. Once a dragon kind of passes from its hatchling stage, where it just hatched, it has to fend for itself, learn how to hunt, feed, defend itself. It has to watch its parents to learn, essentially. Their lairs, typically icy caves or deep subterranean chambers. They like things that are away from the sun. They like it cold. There's no other way to put it. They're kind of hoarders, and you'll find this with a lot of dragons, where they like to store all of their treasure and worldly possessions in their lair. I guess that's just the way Gygax wanted it to be. Easily lootable. But they like to coat it nice, so like you can always make that kind of fun. It likes to reflect the gems. They're very fond of diamonds, and it makes kind of the caverns just like shimmer with, look like there's so much more in there and stuff. It's kind of cool. I think I always like that image in my head. Now, what they eat, they can kind of eat anything. Dragons can just do that. They can literally just eat nearly anything for sustenance. These guys are kind of picky. A lot of times they like to eat what's been frozen. After it kills a creature with its breath weapon, it will basically fall to devouring it while it's stiff and frigid. It buries other kills in snowbanks until they're suitably frozen. So it likes to eat frozen food too. So these guys are all about cold, 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 cold. So when you're using them in a campaign, make sure that the players know how cold it is. I can't really stress that enough. And if there's any mechanics for anything like that, feel free to use them. Some of the older editions did. Some of the newer editions probably do. Survival checks, things like that. Kind of make sure the players know that their characters are it's cold, and it's I just can't stress that enough. And then one last kind of cool little tidbit with them: they are mortal enemies of frost giants. And giants are another, good one for players to fight, especially mid-level players or upper mid-level players. Especially frost giants and stuff. So you can always spice up maybe an encounter where frost giants are fighting a white dragon, and the players just stumble in on it. Pick a side. The frost giants actually kill the dragons for food and armor, and subdue them for guards and mounts. So, something to think about. But, that being said, that's all I have for you on white dragons. They are a good starter dragon. Definitely, they're usually one of the first ones I throw out in my campaigns if I'm raising dragons. as a creature. You can throw them out fairly early. A lot of players, if you have a smart group of players, they can handle it. So, that being said, I'll be back next week with green dragons. So, stay tuned for that.